All right, welcome once again to another free webinar hosted by Notaries for Alabama. This evening's topic is Alabama's remote notarization law, also known as Senate Bill 275, that went into effect July 1, 2021, this year. Most of you know who I am, but not everybody does. My name is Michelle Riley. I am the founder of Notaries for Alabama. I'm currently located in Huntsville. When I started the company, I was down in Birmingham, Alabama, but I moved up here in 2015. I've been a commissioned notary since 2005. I'm very active with the National Notary Association. I try my best to attend those notary conferences each year. When I'm not training notaries and hosting the Hangout group, I do train process servers and private investigators here in Alabama. I am going to do a shameless plug. My notary business is not enough to pay my bills, so I have a 9-to-5 job. I'm employed with Aflac Insurance, and I am a consumer market sales representative, and I sell Aflac products direct to consumers. So any of you who are in need of insurance, life insurance, accident, dental, cancer, critical illness, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to give you a quote and explain how that works. It is important for you to know that I am not a lawyer or an attorney. One of my email addresses is alabamalegal@gmail.com. And some folks have thought due to that email address that I'm a lawyer, and I'm not. And so the information that I'll be providing to you this evening, you should not consider it legal advice. All right. I'm simply sharing with you my understanding of Senate Bill 275. And I only represent myself. I'm not employed by the state of Alabama or the Secretary of State. It's just really little old me, but little old me has been around the block several times, and I try my best to give out accurate information. All right. So if you do have any questions about this law, I encourage you to consult an attorney or call your county's probate office for additional information. Hopefully you'll get the information. I haven't been very successful getting information from probate offices, but hopefully that will change. All right, what are we here to accomplish this evening? Like you, I want to have a better understanding of Senate Bill 275, which is Alabama's remote notarization law. In order to do that, I thought it would be good for me to do a quick overview of what remote online notarization is. And from here on out, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to refer to it as RON, all right? Now, what was approved for us here in Alabama is it RON. This is very important for you to know and understand. What was approved for us is remote ink signed notarization, RIN. Now, you won't see that term in the law because our legislators, I think I could speak for most of them, they don't know the difference. But they got the word remote in there. They got that right. So it is remote notarization, but it's a unique type. So we're going to explain what that is. And then we'll take a closer look at the law itself. Hopefully you were able to download a copy of the law. I have my copy right here. We're going to go through page by page. And that'll be one of the times that I do want to get your questions as we go page by page. Remember, I've asked you to hold most of your questions till we get to Q&A. But when we get into that closer look, definitely we'll open that up for questions. And then we'll talk a little bit more about what knowledge-based authentication and Credential Analysis is. You're like, okay, what is that? You'll see it's going to come up several times in this presentation. And then at the end, I'm going to sit down because I'm standing now, just something I'm trying to do more of to be a little healthier. I'm going to have a seat, and then we're going to really open it up for Q&A and make sure we're all on the same page and find out, are there outstanding questions that we need clarified either by our probate judge, our Secretary of State, or our legislators, or Governor Ivey. Okay, let's get started. First, let's do level setting. What is remote online notarization? As of today, there are close to 30, if not more, states who have approved and authorized RIN for their notaries, okay? And it's also important for you to know RIN looks different in every state. There is no one way to do RIN. I'm in one of the RIN Facebook groups. I'm in there because I want to see what's going on in other states. Some states, and most states, notaries have a choice to be traditional and do everything with paper and pen. And then if they choose to perform RIN notarizations, they have to purchase an additional commission, as well as a lot of other things that we'll talk about briefly in order to perform RIN notarizations. All right. So what really is RIN? RIN involves an electronic document. So the whole process is paperless. The signer or signatory is required to upload or scan or take a picture of a document to get it to the notary, the RIN notary, for notarization. So it requires an electronic document. The signer and the notary meet online using a RIN platform. There are a lot of RIN platforms. I'm going to talk about the top 3 or 4 in the next slide. In some states, the state will tell its notaries, you have to use this platform or these 2 platforms. In some states, they leave it entirely up to the notary. With RIN, the signer's identity is verified using knowledge-based authentication, also known as KBA, or the ID process is handled through Credential Analysis. And then sometimes the state will say, just require the signer to present their government issue ID to the camera so that the notary can see it. And then most states also allow identification to be completed by using personal knowledge. Hold on KBA Credential Analysis, that's coming up more in just a moment. Also with RIN, the signer is going to use an electronic signature. So again, pens, not necessary. Instead, the signer will use their computer, their phone, their iPad to use the mouse to apply an electronic signature to the electronic document. And the notary puts away that old school embosser. There's no need for their ink seal. The notary has to purchase and use an electronic seal and must create an electronic signature. And some of these things have to be filed or recorded with the state. All right. And in some states, in most states, there is a unique notarial certificate so that everyone knows that that notarization was conducted through RIN. And then finally, RIN notaries are typically required to use an electronic notary journal. So I went through that because I want you and I and everyone else in this discussion to be real clear on what is meant by RIN. This is what is going on in 20 to 30 other states today. Now, I mentioned RIN platforms earlier. On your screen, you'll see 3 of the most popular ones: Signex, DocVerify, and Notarize. There are a lot more, and they are popping up like popcorn right now. Why do you think that is? Because there is money to be made. I have a friend who's in another state who was checking out platforms because she was very shocked and disappointed when she investigated to see how much it would cost in order to use a RIN platform. So there are companies that are overseas trying to get in on RIN. So folks, when it comes our turn, we've got our work cut out for us to try to determine what is the best platform for us to use. Startup costs for RIN platforms typically start around $300 and include monthly and transactional fees charged to the notary. RIN can be very expensive. As you know, there are a lot of videos out there on YouTube. I saw one that I liked, and I mention it here. It's called Side Hustle Seattle RIN Platforms. You may want to check it out if you are still very new to what RIN is about. I felt it was a very unbiased presentation of RIN platforms. All right, remember what I just covered does not apply to Alabama. That's what's going on in many other states. Now we need to talk about home, you and me, what's expected of us. And before I jump into this, I need to do this. Keep in mind, some of us have been performing remote ink sign notarizations under Governor Ivey's emergency proclamation due to COVID. I started doing it as soon as she authorized it. Was it in April of last year? I think so, March or April. That is over. Now, I chose to stop it as soon as July 1st, but I think her proclamation doesn't really expire for another few days. But if you have been conducting remote ink sign notarizations due to COVID, it's important that you know, this is my professional opinion, not my legal advice, that you probably need to nix it because the requirements have changed quite a bit, okay? And so, yeah, I'm not doing any RINs at this time because I need to make sure that I comply with Alabama's new law, which is why I think you're here. Whatever you do, we've got to make sure we comply, okay? All right, so that's out of the way. RIN can look different in different states. I need to say that. But we don't have time to get into all that. Let's talk about what Senate Bill 275 says we can and can't do. All right, you ready? 1, paper documents are here to stay for now, okay? Original wet signatures are still required. The signer or signatory must use a pen to sign their name. We, the notary, must use a pen to sign our name and to complete the notary certificate as we normally do in traditional notarizations. the signatory or the signer's identity is verified. I'll talk about how in a moment. I'm surprised I left that dangling there. The notary is required to watch the signer sign the document with the ink pen. And so there'll be this platform still that we use, and we'll talk about platforms. We'll still do that, but it's important that we, the notary, watch the signature being made on the document. The signer is then required to deliver the signed document to the notary. You're probably like, well, wait, doesn't that defeat the purpose? Kinda. You're like, well, why don't they just do a traditional notarization? Yeah. But that form has to get to us. The way that I did this was I would give the signer an option to either FedEx it, UPS it to me. In some instances, they wanted to drive it to me and drop it off at my office or my front door. Because due to COVID, I really was very careful. And so I didn't do any face-to-face notarizations. I'm going to pause here and go back to signatory's identity being verified. Under the old RIN for Alabama, it was the same type of government issue ID that we use for traditional notarizations. All right, that didn't change at all, but it's going to be changing, folks. We'll hit it on the next slide. I'm picking back up at the bullet that says the notary, after the signed document gets to the notary, we must sign our name, put our notary seal on it, and return the form to the signer. And so that's another step. Unless they're waiting outside for you, it means mailing it or returning it. You might ask, well, can it be scanned or emailed? Not if it's a recorded document. I ran into that problem during COVID. Originally, I was scanning the document and emailing it back and forth. And for documents that required recording in January of this year, Montgomery put their foot down and told the county offices, no, we want to see original signatures. The notary maintains a record or log or journal of the transaction. Now, for traditional notarizations, those of you who are familiar with notary law, you know that the journal isn't even required. But for RIN now, beginning 7/1/2021, they want us to maintain some type of record or log. I use the word journal of the transaction. During COVID, I did not require the signer to sign my journal, but I still made an entry and I indicated it was a RIN notarization. So that's probably the route I'm going to continue to go. And then, most importantly, that notarization session that occurs through a video conference platform must be recorded, both audio and video, and the notary must keep that recording for 7 years, so that at any time there's a need to view it, the notary is called upon to produce it. All right, let me catch my breath. We had folks join us. Thank you, everyone, for staying on mute. I appreciate that. We're not yet ready to take questions. I've got about 2, maybe 3 slides. And when we do a closer look at 275, that's when we will pause, we'll take some questions, and then we'll do a deep dive into the law. All right, according to me, yours truly, Senate Bill 275 clearly states what signatures are required. And so this is why in the Hangout group, I caution people from going out and buying software and applications that produce an electronic signature. That's not going to fly here in Alabama for now. All right, we're still using ink. The law clearly states we must be in Alabama to perform the remote notarization. They really stress that. And I can see why. It would be tempting to be on vacation for me to go to New York and take my laptop with me and say, sure, I'll notarize while I'm in New York if the signer's in New York and Alabama. But no, our feet must be planted in Alabama. Identification of the signer. So the law clearly tells us how going forward for RIN notarizations, what type of ID is required. And I do see someone posted a question. I need you to hold off. But if you can't hear me and I'm breaking up, someone can unmute and let me know that. But otherwise, sit tight with your question. Going forward, we as notaries conducting RIN, if we personally know someone, that is enough for us to move forward with the notarization. Otherwise, we will be required to see 2 forms of valid government issue ID. That's as far as, well, no, they also say make sure one of those IDs have a picture and a sample signature. Okay. 2 forms. This really shocked me. And it annoyed me, to be honest, because those of you who have been a notary for a while, it's hard enough to get 1 form of government issue ID, let alone 2 forms. But notice the big word in all caps, a 3-letter word in all caps, and, not or, and. And I had a lawyer take a look at this, and I said, am I reading too much into this? And he's like, no, Michelle, that's an and, which means 2 forms of ID plus a review of public or private data sources. What the heck does that mean? I believe it means knowledge-based authentication or credential analysis. More about those 2 things in a moment. Senate Bill 275 also outlines specific guidelines and a script that we notaries must follow during and after the remote notarization. We've got to monitor, or not monitor, we must state the date and time of the notarization, give a description of the documents that are being notarized, attest where we are located. I believe it just means saying to the camera, this is Michelle Riley, a commissioned Alabama notary. I'm currently located in the county of Madison, Alabama. I think that's what that means. Hopefully it doesn't mean we have to sign some document attesting that we were in Alabama when we did it. We must also on camera describe the type of ID the signer or signatory presented to us. And there must be a clear image of the ID that is being used. Now, during COVID, when I was doing RIN, I did ask the signers to hold their ID up to the camera just to let it sit there for a minute. And so that it would be part of the recording. And so I believe that's what they're requiring again. And come on. There must be a clear image of the signing. That means that the signer, I interpret that to mean the signer can't do this. You, the notary at the other end of the camera, must watch as the signer signs their name. It needs to be clear that the form was not signed and then on camera signed by the signer. Any intentional fraudulent acts by the notary, we're guilty of a Class C misdemeanor. Senate Bill 275 clearly states we cannot notarize absentee ballot applications. People who want to vote and apply to vote by absentee, usually that application requires a notarization. Also, when it's time for them to vote, no more notarizing someone's ballot. Okay, these are very important because they call these forms out in the law. All right, we're going to talk about what's missing, and then we're going to do the deep dive and take some questions, and then do a full Q&A. Okay. All right, what do I feel is missing from this new law? I feel that Senate Bill 275, or this new law, is silent on the subject of fees. There is no mention in this law about us being able to charge an additional fee in order to conduct this type of notarization. Now, does that mean we can't charge an additional fee? Some may think yes. I don't interpret that. And when I was conducting RIN notarizations during the COVID pandemic, I did charge an additional fee for all of these extra steps I had to take. So not addressing the fee could be a blessing, could be a curse. That's going to be up to you to decide. Senate Bill 275 is also silent about jurat notarial acts. Hopefully by now you have enough experience or training to know that not all notarizations are alike. In Alabama, we see acknowledgements, jurats. There are times when we just do oaths or copy certifications. The only thing that I picked up in the law are notarizations that are acknowledgements. That means there are many other types of documents that can't be notarized using RIN. That's my interpretation. I want to hear yours when we get to Q&A. This was big, folks. I wanted to put this next one in red. The law is silent about where the signer must be located. I looked. I expected to see this is for Alabama residents only, or the person must be in Alabama. Zip, nothing, which can be interpreted as we can notarize through RIN for someone in California, for someone in New York, for someone in another country. We'll talk about that in Q&A. It is also silent about the notary journal, whether it can be electronic or paper. I didn't see anything at all about there being a need to indicate on the notarized document that this was done remotely. Okay, I know that's not, I didn't do that at all during the pandemic because again, it's ink and paper. So I guess no need to point it out. All right, let's talk about a review of public or private data sources. Remember, this, the way I interpret this, this is required for every RIN notarization. And during COVID, Governor Ivey's proclamation did not include this stipulation at all. But now it's a requirement. So what do they mean by that? I believe what they mean is knowledge-based authentication, also known as KBA. Now, I've not played a video. Well, yeah, I did during Notary Basics. There's a very short video I'd like to play that clarifies what KBA is. Most of us have used it already at some point in time. Bear with me. Let's hope this plays.
Hi, thanks for joining me. This is the Remote Online Notary Network, and today we will talk about KBA. KBA is knowledge-based authentication. This is how the person who's about to sign documents with an online notary is verified. KBA references the signer's social security number. An ITIN number or any other kind of number will not work. It needs to be a bona fide social security number. State laws require KBA when the notary does not personally know the signer who's about to sign with them online. U.S. citizens should be able to easily pass KBA, but it doesn't mean all of them do. For my own personal signers, about 10 to 15% do fail KBA. But when I first started out, that number was much higher. And with a little preparation, I've been able to get it down and have more people pass. New citizens will have a harder time with KBA. And this is just because their social security number is so much younger. Permanent residence. Check your state law. Some states say that remote online notarization is for U.S. citizens, but other states say anyone with a social security number and a photo ID can notarize online. In that case, permanent residents are eligible. There are 5 questions. They must answer 4 of those questions correctly within 2 minutes. Timing is important. They cannot go over 2 minutes or they will fail. So prepare your signer. 2 minutes goes by so fast. Make sure they know to answer all the questions quickly, but with focus, calmly, and with complete attention to the task at hand. It's not the time to get a drink of water, and it's not the time to take a phone call. Focus on those 5 questions, really encourage them, let them know they're important, and that they'll get 2 chances. But if they fail, they will have a delay. So what kind of questions will they see? Well, they'll very likely see former addresses. 20-year-old addresses have appeared. So someone may need to cast their mind back to their college apartment and remember that address. The questions are pulled from both public and private data. So many of the questions come from what you would see on a credit report, but some of them could easily be Googled. Probably see something about a lien if they have any liens. Car payments, mortgages, student loans, and business lines of credit are really common. And for the cars, make, model, even the color can come up. There's a few common problems. One of them is co-signing. If the signer has co-signed a car note, he or she may not remember much about that car. Another problem is short history. If the signer does not have debts or a social security number is less than 2 years old, there really may not be enough information to even generate 5 questions. If there isn't enough information to generate 5 questions, it's an automatic fail. And of course, inaccuracy, because not everything on a credit report is 100% accurate. There may be some bad information and we just can't control that. 24 hours is the magic number. Most states allow 2 chances to pass KBA. If both attempts are failed, a waiting period of 24 hours begins and there is no way to override it. And some states have a 48-hour KBA waiting time. Let me give you some examples of someone failing. BJ in India entered his home address, in India. The next day, it worked when he entered his mother's address in California. Rochelle was asked about her ex-husband's business address. She didn't know any details about it. The next time she did KBA, she called him and had him on the line in case any questions pertaining to him popped up, and then she passed. Amanda was asked about a Mazda she never owned, but the next day, none of the questions asked about that Mazda, and she was able to pass. Ted Jr. was presented questions he felt certain were meant for Ted Sr. Next day, when he did the KBA questions, he had Ted Sr. on the line. So here's an example in the image of an identity verification history of someone who failed KBA. The most important thing on here is the last time, 12:16 p.m., because that's what time the signer can try again tomorrow. Not just the KBA questions can cause someone to fail, the identification itself can fail. So for one example, KBA passed, but the photo ID failed when the top left corner of the driver's license had very obvious puppy teeth marks on it. In another example, I had a state put a sticker on the license when the holder of that license changed addresses. That's really unusual. That's the only state I know that does that, and I won't mention which one it is, but the sticker did cause the ID verification to fail. In another example, a signer used a US passport instead of a state ID, but the platform I was using could only process state ID. And then the last example, the signer moved 4 months ago and entered her new address. She failed and then passed the next day when she entered her previous address. The whole purpose of KBA is to prevent fraud. It's the main piece preventing it in online notarization. The fact is, ID cards and passports are pretty easy to copy. The physical ID that someone holds and shows the notary is only one piece of the puzzle. The KBA is what makes it really tough to impersonate another person. Now I'm showing you these companies not because you should call them, please leave them alone, but these are the top 3 KBA companies right now. The first is LexisNexis, then there's Ideology and Veritad. So the platform you're using does not run KBA. They contract with one of these companies to run it. So if you contact your platform after a failed KBA, it's not going to influence anything. KBA is kept very separate, very purposefully. It cannot be reset for 24 hours, and the whole purpose is to prevent impersonation and fraud. This is why states require it in the first place. And I also want you to know that KBA is not unique. It's not a policy of any platform. It's just a component to comply with RON law. If you have any questions, I hope I will see you on the Facebook group, Remote Online Notary Network. Subscribe for more RON tips in the future. Thanks for joining me.
All right, let me close that out. Hopefully you were able to hear it. So that's KBA. That's a lot. And again, the new law says, the way I interpret it, if we don't know the signer, we must require 2 forms of ID and KBA or credential analysis. She touched on credential analysis briefly. I don't have a video to show you of that, but normally it means taking a picture or scanning a government issue ID, a license or state ID, and then letting that application or that software to verify that this is a legitimate license or state ID. Now, folks, KBA and credential analysis is not free. We, the notary, would have to pay a subscription in order to use this software. In some states, their own laws say that's on the notary. But I digress. I want to show you one more very short video about challenges with KBA, and then we will get into the rest of the presentation. I thought this was very interesting.
There are a few challenges with knowledge-based authentication. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, which is part of the Department of Commerce, formally downgraded knowledge-based authentication from a strong piece of evidence in terms of proving who you are to a fair piece of evidence, which is a much weaker level of confidence that the person is who they're claiming to be. So why did they do that? One, there have been so many data breaches, Equifax not least, 147 million Americans, that the toothpaste is out of the tube. And once the data is out there and the secrets are public, they're no longer trustworthy. So when you think about services like Zillow, maybe a question is, what's your mortgage payment? Criminals have access to your address history into Zillow, and they can actually back out what your mortgage payment is. And then with Google Street View, Google's actually created imagery of all the vehicles that are parked in front of your home. So they've now tied your address to the vehicles, and when it says, what kind of car did you drive or what was the car payment, criminals can answer these questions faster, more accurately than legitimate people can. And then you consider that a third of legitimate users aren't able to remember the answers to the questions. It's a deeply flawed modality because it leaves legitimate users out, and organized crime can defeat it at scale whenever they want to. That's not where you want to be.
All right, that was short and sweet. And I'm going to close this out. And we are just about ready for question and answers. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Right now, I can't remember what I meant by notary requirements and fees. Now I do remember. So again, in order to subscribe to companies that offer knowledge-based authentication, there is a vetting process. One, there's a cost to the notary, and there are requirements that each company sets up. I don't have time to get in that, but there's some folks who may not be approved for KBA. I'm thinking most signing agents who go through a background check already to be certified shouldn't have a problem passing it. But in Alabama, it's very easy to become a notary. So just be aware that they have those, they have certain requirements. And then credential, well, one of the requirements that I heard, I haven't verified this yet, is that we need provide a physical location to like an office. So most of us are remote. Most of us aren't doing business in our homes. And so that could be a problem. Again, I need to do more research on what credential analysis really looks like, but Notarize, I believe, uses it. And so you can go to their YouTube page for more information. All right. So let's now pause and do a deeper dive. We'll pause, take some questions, and then go page by page into Senate Bill 275, the law, and let's talk about it. To do that, let me get rid of the presentation. That is not what I wanted to do. I want to stop sharing. There we go. All right. Before I pull out my copy of the law, what questions do you have so far about what I covered? Michelle, what did you mean by this, that, and the other? Go ahead, unmute your mic. And I just need to remind everyone that this is being recorded. Questions? Thank you, Alan, for posting the link in chat. Where to get a copy of Senate Bill 275. You can also get a copy when you registered, if you did register, I had it so it downloaded it immediately. And then you can also get a copy from notariesforalabama.com's website. Okay, so 3 places. Questions?
Okay, it's Tamika. How you doing?
Doing well, Tamika.
I think you answered my question. I was just taken aback by the fact that it basically is pointless. I just feel like it's pointless. You can't do a jurat. Like they can't sign it and bring beforehand and bring it to you and you notarize it. Like I just don't understand the point. I'm confused.
Okay.
I'm so confused.
All right. Anybody else? Any specific questions? All right, let's take a look at it. And we may, and I hear you, Tamika. I'm not confused. Parts of me sees where they're going with this because I've done so many of them. The reason why it doesn't confuse me, Tamika, is because it's not Ron. Now, maybe you're thinking, well, why didn't they just approve Ron? And I think it's because we're in Alabama. And I don't think our courthouse, our clerks are ready yet to go fully electronic. But I think this is an indication that it's coming.
As I was researching it, that's definitely what I thought. I was like, this is Alabama. We in the Stone Age already. So I just really felt like, you know how you get the document notarized electronically. A lot of agencies probably were gonna reject them, saying like, this is not valid. I don't want this. I need a wet stamp. I mean, a wet signature.
Okay.
It's just
All right.
frustrating.
All right, let's go ahead and do a deep dive into the law. Anything, all right, on page 2 of Senate Bill 275, and if you can mute if you're not speaking, that is where in the middle of the page, line 9, it talks about how the notarization should take place. And it does say, number 1, well, it says how notarizations going forward, all notarizations can take place in Alabama. Number 1, physically appearing before the notary, or 2, appearing through use of two-way audio-visual communication technology. Now, right now, I feel Zoom is sufficient for two-way, but Zoom's not your only option. They're not telling us which vendor to use, which is good. You've got options. But what I highlighted is that provided that the notary is physically located in this state, and it also talks about the recording being kept by the notary for 7 years. Don't sleep on this, folks. You know, this is something I purchased an external hard drive for, so that when a request, and trust me, eventually a request will come through, produce the recording of this notarization. And then at the bottom of page 2, that's where it gets into how to verify the person's identity. And again, when I read it the first time, I missed the word "and." I thought it was just 2 forms of ID. But when I read it again, I was like, no, it says the presentation of 2 valid forms of government issue identification, one of which shall include the face and signature of the signatory, and a process by which the notary verifies the identity of the signatory through a review of public or private sources, data sources. So I encourage all of you to reach out to your probate office and ask them, is that their understanding as well? I need to get a letter to the senator who proposed this, Javon, and ask him that same question. Did you really mean 2 forms of ID and this KBA and credential? And if so, my feeling is that's going to eliminate quite a few notaries from wanting to do this type of notarization. Again, it does talk about acknowledgements and acknowledging signatures. That's why I'm assuming they only want us to perform acknowledgement notarizations and not jurats. And that does eliminate quite a few types of documents. Although I personally feel the majority of the forms that I notarize, and I specialize in general notary work, are acknowledgements. But
Michelle,
yes, go ahead, Alan.
what did you say made you think that jurats and oaths were exempt?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll give you that. Give me just a moment. I did not highlight it.
Well, that's why I asked you.
So knowledge. I think I passed it. Give me just a moment. Yeah, I think it's at the beginning. All right. On page 1, Alan, it starts with relating to attestations by notaries to add section whatever to the Code of Alabama to authorize the use of remote notarization for acknowledgements. So I saw it there. And then I saw it one other place, Alan. So again, it's not just screaming, you can only do acknowledgements, but I felt it was implied. And while I'm looking for the second reference, if someone else has a question or wants to comment, please do.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this working? Okay. I was just wondering, is there a specific platform or anything we're supposed to use when recording our meetings with people?
The law does not say if the law is silent. It just says audio visual.
Okay.
Audio visual. And then
As long as it has the ability to record audio and video and allows you to save it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Other than that, they're leaving it up to us. If we find that KBA and credential analysis is necessary, the law does not say which platforms to use for that either. And to be honest, I'm kind of happy. I like the freedom to choose, but then we're left with who to choose, who to go with. We've got to shop around. What are the rates? How is their service? So yeah, but Ellen, there was one more reference of acknowledgement. I can't find it now. When I do, I will let you know. What jumped in my mind is I notarize a lot of Alabama marriage certificates. That is a affirmation. And I did a lot of those during COVID through RIN. And that means we can't do those either because an oath is required. Any other questions?
Hey, Michelle, this is Robin. I got a quick question. I'm sure this came up many of times. As far as the date for those that's going to mail in the document, documents, are we gonna be putting the date that we notarize it?
Good question. Good question. During COVID, Governor Ivey's proclamation was clear. And it said, when the notary meets with the signer and witnesses the signature, that's going to be the notarization date. I want to quickly look to see if that's the case here.
If your copy is notated the same as mine, page 3, line 26.
It isn't. I'm looking at the signed copy of the law, which
Okay, my copy says the official date and time of the notarization is the date and time the notary public witnessed the signature.
Is that the one from Legiscan, the link you posted?
Yes.
And is that a signed one or no?
No.
Because Alan, I saw that one and I was working from that one first. And then when I got this latest one, it's changed. So that's another question that we need to ask.
Hey, Michelle.
Hang on, I'm hoping that it will be, and it makes sense to me that it will be the way that it was during COVID. Yes, go ahead, Audrey, if that was Audrey.
This is Audrey. On the copy that has the signature, I got this from the one that when I registered, it downloaded automatically. It's on page 3, number 17, line 17, and it does say the same thing.
Good, good. Thank you. I didn't see that.
Where do I get that signed copy?
If you want it now, go to notariesforalabama.com, scroll to the bottom. You'll see downloadable documents. It's one of the first ones in the list. Audrey, what line was that? Audrey?
Line 17.
Not on my copy. Wow.
This is the copy that we receive when we register.
All right, and I've got something different. So good. So that answers the question now. So if that's what you've got, is it signed, Audrey? Go
Yes,
to the,
yes.
okay.
Yes, mine is fine, and it's got all the attachments as far as a MAC. Somebody from the Speaker of the House of Representatives signed it, and then it's got a stamp where it was approved on April 29th, 2021 at 1:05 p.m.
Okay, then I'm going with that, and I just printed out the wrong thing. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for that. So you're seeing all these nuances. We've got to work out all of these little discrepancies and details, which is why I'm not doing any RINs right now. And if you feel ready to fly, go ahead. But the last thing I want to do, and I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but last year, the first few RIN notarizations that I did during the pandemic, those were some that I wish I could have done over. You know, thankfully I recorded them, and I'm sure there'll be a little, well, okay, Michelle, you tried, but I'm feeling for this that I need to really dot my I's and cross my T's. So what I am willing to do is draft a document that highlights, and I'd love some help on this from those of you who like to do this sort of thing. I mean, it's work. But let me go ahead and say this. I didn't expect to say this today, but we need a focus group. We need to form a focus group that can work together, identify our questions, discrepancies, get them in front of the right individuals, the decision makers, to come back to us and clarify so that we can perform this type of notarization confidently and correctly. And so if you have an interest in working with me on this, what I need from you is an email. I don't want to jot it down. Don't type it in chat. Send me an email. All of you should have it. If you don't, send it to notaries, 4 Alabama@gmail.com. Again, notaries, 4 Alabama@gmail, and let me know you're willing to be part of the focus group. I don't think there's any other entities out there in the state doing this. Somebody's got to do it. And I can't do it alone. You know how hard it is for you to reach me by phone. You know how hard it is for me to get your certificates of completions to you on time. I need help. All right, any other questions about this new RIN that you were hoping to get answered? I'm hoping, again, about the fee, because fees keep coming up. I'm hoping that because they didn't say you can only charge the $5 fee, that we have flexibility there. And we can tack on an additional RIN fee to help pay for, because this Zoom that I'm using, I pay a monthly fee for. There is a free Zoom. It may not be anymore, but there used to be a free Zoom package, but they had limits. I think it was only one other person. It could be a total of 2 people. And the session could only be a certain period of time. Well, this type of notarization, I could see running over a little bit. And so you may end up having to pay for even the Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever platform you choose to use. But if there is a free platform, again, as Alan stated, make sure that it allows you to record and keep the recording and have access to it. There may be some RON platforms out there, RON, that we can use or adopt, or Jimmy Rig to help out, especially with the KBA Credential Analysis. So these are things that I'd like for the focus group to explore. All right, there should be more questions. If there are none, we'll wrap it up. Any questions? Don't be shy. Let me check chat real quick. Nope, I don't see anything in chat. Well, I hope this was helpful to at least get you to better understand what was approved, what went into effect for all of us July 1. What's great, in my opinion, is we can choose to do this or not. But think about this, and I think those of you that are here have already thought about it. Wouldn't it be nice to be among the small few who are offering this service? It could be a source, a nice marketing tool for you and a way to generate some more income. So something to think about. I don't think it's going to be easy. It took me a lot of time to come up with the process for what I used in COVID, to get it so that I felt comfortable and that it flowed. And now it's revamping that process to something new. Thank you for coming out. Again, I apologize for the registration issues. I'll tighten that up and do better for the next one. Again, if you're interested in the focus group, please let me know right away. Again, I need your help. I really do. And unless there are any questions, we'll go ahead and end this session. Thanks so much. Have a good evening. I'll see you back in the hangout.